Hello and welcome back to the Cricket Nerds. It's me and Zach, and we're going to be talking about Pakistan qualifying. Huge, a brilliant game. So we'll have a chat about the juiciest bits of that game, the pièce de résistance of that game. First things first, the crowd was amazing. Like that
Mm.
atmosphere was brilliant. What did you think of just the vibes?
Vibes were great. I mean, I think what we're getting, especially when India and Pakistan playing, is a real buzz around the ground. And I think the Pakistan fans it's next level because they are in with a chance of winning after being without a chance of winning. And if Pakistan win this World Cup, I reckon they should share the trophy with South Africa because they've done them a massive favor there. But yeah, Pakistan and India are always going to generate good crowds. And today it was great. But then also New Zealand, fairly local to Australia. So you're going to get a lot of those supporters as well. This is basically a home World Cup for them in some ways. So yeah, real buzz around the place. But it was an interesting start because we've seen Finn Allen do okay this tournament and Devin Conway kind of do quite well for New Zealand. But yesterday's podcast, which everyone should go watch, we talked about New Zealand's top of the order runs being a big thing for them. And today they kind of failed in a few ways.
Yeah, and I want to say that Shaheen Shah Afridi, first of all, is an incredible player. Like we spoke yesterday in the video that everybody needs to go back and watch
Mm.
about how much he's really fun to watch. Like he's got a beautiful action. There's like 6'6" of him, and he's quick and all that good stuff. But I love his celebration, and he just stands there and it's just like that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very
Brilliant.
cool. And yeah, when he got that LBW decision for Finn Allen, I knew that was when this game was going to get spicy.
Mm.
Um, Now Devon Conway did not have a good day today. He got 21 off 20 before he was run out with like an amazing bit of fielding from our boy Shadab Arm. Oh my god, I keep on doing
You
this.
said that last time.
I did, didn't
Shadab
I?
Khan.
Shadab Khan. Yeah, like outstanding bit of fielding there. And Conway was also terrible with the gloves. And
Mm.
I feel like now's as good a time as any to address it. Why did he have the gloves this tournament? When you've got players like Glenn Phillips, who, if I'm not wrong, is a keeper,
Yep, he is.
and Finn Allen, who, unless I'm much mistaken, is a keeper. Why then would you give it to Devon Conway, who is at best an occasional wicket keeper?
I
Riddle
don't
me that.
know. I don't really know. I don't know if he's got better wicket keeping stats or if he's just been doing better in the warm up or the others have slight injuries, which mean they can't wicket keep. I'm not really sure. I mean, he's generally not an awful keeper. And I think in 2020 cricket you can get away with it, but I would say that Glenn Phillips is the better of the keepers in that squad.
Mm.
Yeah, I found it a bit puzzling as well. But I just felt like New Zealand. You look how they batted in the last half of the innings. In the first half of the innings, we know that Pakistan have some very good opening bowlers in Shaheen Shah Afridi, Naseem Shah, and Harris Ralph, who are also very good at the death.
Mm.
So when you know you've got that going on at the death, the the spinners, when they come on, you kind of want to target them. But then you look at Pakistan spinners and you're like, oh yeah, they're also good as well. So you've kind of got to pick a bowler or two bowlers who you're going to target to provide a bit of impetus to the innings. And I was watching it thinking they're going quite slowly. I was just waiting for something to happen, for Kane Williamson or Conway to play a big shot to kind of get the innings moving, and it never came. They were almost content to just push it around, get a few singles, and maybe scrape the odd boundary. But from New Zealand's top three, there were only 6 boundaries scored, and that was out of half the balls as well in the innings, which
Mm.
isn't what you want. You don't want a boundary every 10 balls in 2020 cricket. They want a boundary every over or every 8 deliveries, maybe. So there just wasn't enough firepower there.
Yeah, and I think that really crippled them. I think they made it look like it was a much harder pitch than it was.
Mm.
You're right. They played it too safe. We I described them as vanilla yesterday, and they were exactly that. Too vanilla though. They didn't even have nice little sprinkles of vanilla seed. It was just it was boring. It was basically ice. There was nothing going on. I've gone too deep into this ice cream analogy.
keep going.
No,
yeah,
it's not enough. They need some sprinkles.
They needed some Daryl Mitchell sprinkles.
They did, and Daryl Mitchell provided those sprinkles. But it was one of those where, Daryl Mitchell and Jimmy Neesham, we know that they're explosive, and you were just thinking, why weren't they there earlier? Because that's what we've had for so long in T20 is you have anchors up top, and then you have people that will just kind of swing at it in the middle order. And that mindset will get you a solid 150, 160, but on a good track, 150, 160 isn't good enough. And it's about judging those conditions. So far, 160 has been a brilliant score, and we've had some amazing games. But I think this track looked more like a 170 kind of pitch. And you're right, there wasn't the impetus, and by the time they kind of kicked into gear, half the overs had gone. What did you think of the Pakistan innings? Because what we said happened. We said the difference will have to be Rizwan and Babar, and my goodness, they put on an opening stand.
Yeah, and one of the other things I said yesterday was if New Zealand get a subpar score, they have the bowling attack to defend it, and they got more than a subpar score. I think it was well below average, as he said, but also it doesn't take into account the fact that, yes, you've got the best opening bowlers in Bolt and Southey, but are you going to get Rizwan and Azam early? And with Pakistan having that lifeline, the way Pakistan batted in their last game against Bangladesh, where they needed a small score, and Rizwan and Azam batted time, they batted to over 10, that they kind of applied the same thoughts here. However, they went at a much quicker rate, and they looked very good. They looked back into form, really, and they provided the opening stand that everyone was waiting for. They just really good to watch. And also the difference for me was the difference in quantity of boundaries, especially early on. Because New Zealand, they were barely going at a runner ball by the 12th over, but Pakistan were on 100 by the 12th over. So yeah, it was completely different, polarized in how they went about those opening overs, and they put pressure on the New Zealand bowlers.
Yeah, and it's mad because the opening stand should have been about 7 runs, because not Daryl Mitchell, Devon Conway put down that catch. Now, it wasn't an easy catch, but it was a standard wicket keeper's catch. Now, if it was me or you doing it, it would be like, oh, well, that's fine. They've dropped that, but they're terrible keepers, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Devon Conway, or whoever is the New Zealand national keeper, that should be snaffled up, and that would have been Babar Azam first ball. That would have been a huge, huge dint in the Pakistan lineup. So honestly, I just think Conway had a bad game, and it did make quite a big difference to that New Zealand attack. Because you're right. As soon as Babar got that extra life, he then kicked it into gear, and it was such a classy opening stand. Not a single 6 between them. It was like just everything was nice, sumptuous, on the carpet, proper cricket shots. I was noticing actually when I was watching them, they don't really play T20 cricket. They just play fast ODIs. Because if I see Joss Butler and Alex Hales open for 100-run stand, I expect to see at least one slog. I expect to see a scoop. I expect to see an attempt at a reverse scoop or like switch hit type thing.
Yeah.
Whereas with those two, if the spinner is on spinning it away, they will cut 100% of the time instead of reverse sweeping or doing a switch hit, anything a bit more exotic. And it showed that works as well.
Yeah, and they read the situation well, I think. They didn't need to take risks. They're just playing positive cricket. And I think you're right. They kind of went at that fast ODI tempo, maybe even just ODI tempo at the start of their innings. And there's a reason why they've been far and away the best T20 opening partnership in the last 3 years. There's a reason for that, and we saw that today. They're so experienced at the top of the order. They know how to judge a chase and win those games from those positions. And I was disappointed by New Zealand because I felt like overall they had an average game. They didn't provide the intensity that you need to win a semi-final, whereas Pakistan, they had the intensity. You could see it at the start with Shaheen Shah Afridi's bowling, and you could see it at the start of their batting innings as well through Rizwan and Azam. It was that want to put pressure on the opposition. And I don't think I ever saw that from New Zealand. I never saw them applying the pressure. And by the time they got back into the game, when Bolt got Azam and Rizwan out, it was too late. They only needed a few runs, and they were then having to contend with the Pakistan middle order, who obviously didn't have much of a go this game, but they fired all tournaments. So it didn't look likely from the moment Rizwan and Azam had 70, 80 runs. It seemed like the job was done, which is a shame for New Zealand because they played really well to get to this stage. They got to the final in the last tournament and lost to Australia. They got to the final of the 2019 World Cup and lost to England. They're a team that's always there, but they just didn't provide the impetus today to say, actually, it's our turn to win a tournament.
Always the bridesmaid, but never the bride.
Always the bridesmaid, never the bride, yeah. Should we think about some cricket nerds questions?
Absolutely, we should. So the first one we've got is from our boy, PD, an absolute legend of the game. Thank you so much. And also, if you want to be featured in this section, leave a question down below. We will answer it. So his Cricket Nerds question is, thought experiment. Boys, I'll paint you a scenario and would love to have your opinions on it. This is not my original idea. It was born during a casual conversation. Let's eliminate the toss and let's have a different system in place. We can experiment on it in bilateral series and IPL. The below mentioned system cannot be used during neutral venues. Okay. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
The home captain will be given two choices. Choice number one, they get to make the decision of batting first or second. However, with this choice comes a penalty of 5 runs. An automatic extra 5 runs will be awarded to the visiting team when they come to bat. Or ask the visiting captain to decide whether they want to bat first or second, and the match continues without any penalties. The fairness of the above system can be justified by focusing on the favourable conditions for the home team that already gives them a slight advantage. Furthermore, the pitch and weather conditions can be properly assessed only during the match day, while the home team might have certain experience playing on most conditions. What are your thoughts?
Wow, that is a big one.
It is a big one.
Did he mention, because he mentioned they can experiment on bilateral series in the IPL, was he focusing on 2020 cricket or one-day cricket or test cricket or all cricket?
I think it was more on 2020 cricket because there was another suggestion from Vinay Kumar after, who offered an alternative, which was, how about having 2 10-over innings like test, no follow-on allowed to nullify the conditions, which is also an interesting idea.
Yeah, I think that this idea of bringing fairness around cricket in terms of the toss to eliminate the idea that if you win the toss, you win the game, which we have seen on a number of tournaments. And like you take the IPL for a while. I think it was the last edition of the IPL or the one before when it was in the UAE.
Before, yeah.
And there were the first 10 games or something ridiculous like that. The team that won batted second. So if you won the toss, you chase, you win the game. And similarly, when you've got we've had it in World Cups before as well, where the conditions have just suited batting second because of the dew factor, and teams have just won that way. So I think it comes down to the conditions mostly. So it's hard to say, well, if the home team gets to decide, then they can have the penalty of 5 runs. But then when you're playing a World Cup, when it's neutral venues, how would you decide it then? So I see the argument for it, but I don't think it's going to create fairness in the game, because I reckon the team will just ask the visiting captain to decide, because an extra 5 runs that's a lot in 2020 cricket.
Yeah.
Even when
think,
conditions have favoured one team, it's 5 runs can win or lose the game.
Yeah, and you can look back on games and be like, well, if they'd, look, like, let's think about last T20 World Cup, which was in the UAE that India hosted, and England versus New Zealand in the semi-final. The dew came on, Chris Jordan bowls a horrible over, and the game's taken away from England. If they'd had an extra 5 runs to play with there, probably wouldn't have made a bar of difference, because the dew factor made such a huge difference. So, I think it's an interesting idea and it's fun to think about. But also, I like tradition and I like the toss.
Well, I guess the 10 over innings one is an interesting thing, because that's almost like thinking about it in baseball terms, the fact that you have innings where you switch out from batting and fielding, which I think won't happen because of warm-ups and things like that. It will just add time to the game, which I think they're trying to avoid. Although it is, I think that's a nice suggestion. I don't see it happening because of that factor of adding time into the game. Yeah. We're being quite boring and looking at it realistically, aren't we?
Yeah,
it's a great idea. We'll say
let's
that.
Do it. Let's do it. I have actually played a game like that, but I think it was even shorter. Okay. I think we did like a T10, but it was 5 over innings. It was just weird. It was just a charity thing. But it's a good laugh. Right. Next Cricket Nerds question is from Shobin Gupta, who said, what would be your playing 11 for England if Milan misses out? Now, I need to amend this a little bit, because it's looking like Mark Wood is also a question mark. So in that case, Zach.
Yes.
What is your playing 11 for England if Milan and Mark Wood miss out?
So in the last podcast, I did mention the fact that if Milan doesn't play, I would probably look at playing an extra bowler in David Willey, who can also carry the bat. However, now with Mark Wood missing out, I feel like we need that extra bowling option more. So for me, bringing in Chris Jordan would be a good idea, because he offers he's better batter than Mark Wood, and he's a good death bowler, and he can provide that extra pace, which I think England are missing without Mark Wood. And then I would bring in David Willey. However, I think that England will bring in Chris Jordan for Mark Wood, because he's kind of the first choice replacement as the bowler. And I think England will stick with their model of batting heavy and pick Phil Salt instead of David Milan. So as much as I'd want to see David Willey and Chris Jordan come in, I think they're going to pick Phil Salt over David Milan.
I can see that being a possibility. I think I personally wouldn't mind seeing Timol Mills, because
he's the other option,
of the replacements, he's the quickest. And I quite like him. Yeah, he's also left arm. He could offer quite a bit, and he's a good death bowler as well. And I think it's going to be a toss up between Willey and Jordan for my money as to who you choose, because both of them, I think, add the same with the bat when it's that low down the order. Especially in the last couple of years, I think Chris Jordan's really improved with the bat. He was always listed as like a bowling all-rounder or as an all-rounder, and every time he came in, I was like, oh, this bloke can't bat. But now when I see him more as a bowler, he can do actually quite a bit. So I'm like, oh, Jordan can bat. So I don't know who I expect to see, but I think if it was me choosing, I would pick Mills as a replacement for Wood because I think he's the closest to like for like. And it would then be a toss of a coin between, I think I'd choose David Willey just because that new ball bowling, or Phil Salt just for the extra batsman. So, yeah, I think I'd go for Salt and Mills because I think we've just got so many bowling options already.
I think the thing with Mark Wood is that he is the point of difference in most of our games. He's the extra pace. He can rip through a batting lineup.
Yeah.
And that we're going to miss that, I think, against India, because if India are 3 down and going well, and then Mark Wood comes on and in an over just blows out 2, and then it's into the tail, then it's a bit. Well, who's going to do that? And I guess Timor Mills, he is a point of difference, but he's not played in international cricket that much of recent. Not as much as Jordan or Willie.
Well, Jordan
so
hasn't played since the 100. I think he's only played one game, and he went for, it was like 0 for 30 to 40.
So maybe they should bring in Willie and Phil Salt. I don't know. It's just that point of difference thing, and I feel like Willie getting wickets early, that could be a massive point for England, but we'll see what happens.
If we had our time again, I just want to throw a Cricket Nerds question out to you myself before I go to Shobin Gupta's other one. Do you think we should have brought Duckett?
Based on his form?
Based on just on how good he was in Pakistan. Because I think on these pitches, this World Cup, I think he would have been incredible because he can play the slower innings, but he's also very good. He's very good at sweeps, reverse sweeps. He hits a lot of 4s. So like the long boundaries don't really matter as much. And sorry. And his stats after that Pakistan series are outstanding. I think I'm going to get him up exactly because it's worth having a look at. He averages in T20Is now, he averages 40.33 at a strike rate of 158.
Nice.
I'd say that's all right.
It'll
do. And I just think, because Milan's now out, who would I slot in? Ideally, if I had all the options, I'd put Ben Stokes at 3, and I'd probably have Duckett at 4, and then Brook 5, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I think hindsight's a wonderful thing. And yet, at the same time, England could have made a mistake here because they brought Phil Salt as the replacement opener. But we've already got Milan as a replacement opener. And if Milan needed to slot in as the other opener, then you could have Stokes batting at 3, as you've said, in which case that would have left a slot open for Duckett, who, given recent performances against Pakistan, would easily get in the side ahead of Salt.
Yeah.
And with all of this, we've got to remember that, yes, there were quite a lot of players in the England team, like Ben Duckett, like Phil Salt, like Harry Brook, who are quite new to international cricket. And I think, well, they're new to this white ball squad. And I think one of the things is that they're still gaining that experience. However, they're still some of the best white ball players in the world who are getting picked up in franchise cricket. And I think in international cricket, they're just waiting their turn to shine. And I think they will have these opportunities again. I think we need to make sure that we still have faith in players like Phil Salt to deliver, even though we think he's not as good as, say, a Ben Duckett. I don't know.
Yeah. The final question we've got from Shobin Gupta is, New Zealand batsmen did struggle with Pakistan's bowling. Looking at today's match, what are your thoughts on the final? I personally feel Pakistan might be lifting the World Cup trophy on Sunday, irrespective of the team. That's a big call, Shobin. I think it will completely be 50-50 in that final, because whoever wins out of India and England will have just beaten an incredible white ball team. They'll be on heaps of momentum there, and I think going into that final, it's going to be absolute fireworks no matter what happens. As an England fan, obviously England versus Pakistan, sounds good to me. We've won 5 out of our last 8 meetings, which have been all in the last like couple of months. So I'd say that they're pretty good odds. But India versus Pakistan final. Oh, I want to see that almost as much. And
Okay.
it's quite a good, I feel like this is a good position to be in for an England fan. That really, well, for me at least, because I really want England to win the World Cup. Don't get me wrong. But if England get knocked out by India tomorrow and we have India versus Pakistan in the final, I'm not going to feel that hard turned by, because I think that's going to be one of the greatest games of cricket.
I think it depends on the manner of England's loss. If England lose, that will determine. But I do agree. I think the hurt will be short-term hurt when I realise that it'll be India-Pakistan final if England lose.
And we end up getting 500,000 views.
Yes. I do think that, that's what we're looking forward to. I do think, though, that Pakistan and India have solid opening batsmen, a firing middle order, great pace bowlers, and good spinners, which is everything you want in 2020 cricket. England have solid openers, a misfiring middle order, good pace bowlers, although one of them's injured, and okay spinners. I think there's a lot riding on Adil Rashid against India, and we need someone in our middle order to stand up and make a good score, whether that's Liam Livingstone, who hasn't done much this tournament, whether it's Harry Brook, who hasn't done much this tournament. One of them needs to make a contribution, make a solid score. That's needed for England, because otherwise this India team and Pakistan, they're just going to be too good. So I'm rooting for England, but I think it's going to be tricky.
On that note, we're going to end. So thank you so much for watching. You can like and subscribe if you want. We would really appreciate it if you did. You can also follow our social medias. The link to social medias and other like audio podcasts and stuff are in the link tree down in the description. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for continued support, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.